just like to check if
Catalina, you're muted.
Apologies. I just wanted to give a quick welcome to everybody. We are initiating today's regional webinar on advancing national planning on SLCPs and implementation in West African states. Today's meeting will be recorded so that we can provide the recording with all participants as well as the presentations. We are also offering interpretation, English to French, French to English. So if you would like, please scroll down to the bottom of your menu where you are able to see English or French. So you can select your language of choice, and that will facilitate the listening of the meeting. But once again, welcome to the regional webinar on advancing national planning on SLCPs and implementation in West African states. We are very pleased to have you today. And without further delay, I would like to hand over to Mr. Peter Derry, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition's co-chair from Ghana, who will provide some introductory remarks. Welcome, Peter, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Catalina. And let me say good afternoon to all of you. I believe we are from West Africa, so we are all in the afternoon. Except maybe Catalina, who's coming from far, and then maybe our colleagues from East Africa, like Richard. But just to say that I'm very glad to have all of you today on board to be part of this very important webinar, which we'll be looking up to for some time now. And let me use the opportunity to also apologize on behalf of the Secretariat for the postponement of the webinar. This was due to an ECOWAS meeting that was held in Accra. And looking at the participants that we were expecting for this meeting, we thought that most of them were also participating in the ECOWAS meeting. So upon discussions, we had to postpone the meeting. So very sorry for the inconvenience to those of you who were not part of the ECOWAS meeting. But thank you very much for being here this afternoon. For the benefit of all of those that probably are non-CCSC members, I want to just say that the Climate and Clean Air Coalition is a voluntary partnership of governments, intergovernmental organizations, businesses, scientific institutions, and civil society organizations committed to improving air quality and protecting the climate through actions to reduce short-lived climate pollutants. This global network includes hundreds of state and non-state partners and local actors carrying out activities across several economic sectors. We rely on a mix of excellent knowledge, high-level political commitment, and a variety of cost-effective approaches to grasp opportunities and realize climate benefits as outlined in our 2030 strategy. We have a broad partnership works to reduce short-lived climate pollutants collectively and individually. Personally, as co-chair, I want to encourage non-CCAC members to join hands with the CCAC in efforts to reducing short-lived climate pollutants to achieve the 1.5 degree Celsius Paris Agreement. Similarly, I also use this opportunity to introduce the CCAC to the African Development Bank to support our action programs that bring climate change resilience to vulnerable states. Just last week, as I said earlier on, I had the opportunity of chairing a technical meeting of experts from the ECOWAS region, which validated a regional climate strategy, which is expected to consolidate and harmonize interventions from the different countries in the fight against climate change. And I believe that joining hands with the CCSO will bring added value to complement the efforts of member states to improve the effectiveness of climate actions and the implementation of the nationally determined contributions. Ladies and gentlemen, the aim for today's event is to identify key strategies and actions that can be effective in building on the work undertaken in West Africa to increase implementation of actions that can reduce SLCPs. We are going to have two parts as far as today's meeting is concerned. The first part will highlight and show the impact of climate and clean air coalition work, building the capacity of countries for effective national planning and implementation, and taking an integrated approach that simultaneously improves air pollution and mitigates climate change, as well as delivery on sustainable development goals. The second part will include country presentations from the region, and we have representations from Ghana, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Benin, and Togo, emphasizing the approach they have taken to include SLCPs in their updated NDCs and for identifying priority mitigation actions to reduce SLCPs that can also support regional development imperatives. The third part of the event will focus on implementation of the mitigation measures identified in the national SLCP plans. Our expected outcomes will be recommendations on a regional approach to enhance capacity to take up planning and mitigation in ECOWAS countries and to identify organizations that can support regional processes. Once again, I am very grateful to the African Development Bank and other development partners that are participating in today's meeting, and I wish all of us successful deliberations. Thank you very much and good day.
Thank you very much for your words, Peter. We appreciate your introduction, and obviously Ghana has been a great supporter of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition and work and has advanced very much on the national planning on short-lived climate pollutants. We would like to now turn over to Mr. Leko Musa, Director of Environment from the ECOWAS Commission. Mr. Musa, please take the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. Je voudrais m'adresser en français, donc au nom du commissaire en charge de l'agriculture, de l'environnement et des ressources en eau de la CEDEAO. Donc, monsieur le commissaire, l'honorable commissaire Sékou Sangaré, donc, m'a désigné pour le représenter.
To represent him during the opening of this webinar. And I would like to open in his name. Mr. the representative of the Minister of Environment of the Republic of Ghana, ladies, gentlemen, representatives of member states, ladies, gentlemen, partners, ladies, gentlemen, experts. It is with great pleasure that I am taking the opening of this regional webinar on the advancement of planification, national planification of SLCPs. SLCPs, as the acronym goes in UK or in English, and its applications in West Africa. I would like to transmit a cordial salute from Jean-Claude Cassibrou, President of the Commission of CDAO, as well as the Honorable Commissary Sangare, Commissary in charge of agriculture, environment, and water resources. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, SLCPs are powerful agents against the climate, which remain in the atmosphere for a far shorter time than carbon dioxide, but their potential in heating the atmosphere can be several times more important. Certain pollutants are also dangerous atmospheric pollutants, which have negative effects on human health, ecosystems, on productivity within the agricultural sector. SLCPs are black carbon, methane, tropospheric ozone, are principal contributors to the anthropic effects after carbon dioxide. They're responsible for up to 45% of climate warming. If no measures are taken to reduce these pollutants in the coming decades, these will represent up to 50% of global warming caused by human activity. To this day, 10 countries out of 50 of the CDAO ECOWAS region are partners of this initiative. So this is an occasion, the occasion to call upon the 5 remaining countries to come and join this collective movement in order to extract the very best out of the opportunities for financing to combat these SLCPs. The multilateralism has to intensify.
Please bear with us. We seem to be having a technical issue with Mr. Musa's connection.
You should put off the camera.
Please let us give him a moment to reconnect. As we wait, okay.
Hello,
Yeah,
hello.
well,
I think there is some issue here for connecting.
yes,
So,
thank you
yeah,
for
I has been
reconnecting.
disconnected on ECOWAS yeah,
Thank you,
line.
Mr.
So now I connect with my handset. So, okay. Ok, donc je vais reprendre.
So I will just pick up on where I left off. Ladies and gentlemen, at this stage, 10 countries of the ECOWAS zone are members of this initiative, and this is a great opportunity to call upon the member states, or rather 5 other states, to come and join this collective movement in order to extract the best opportunities, financing opportunities for the combat against SLCPs. We have to intensify multilateralism in order for climate change and biodiversity, pollution, waste is treated, and Africa must position itself on the world stage. And ECOWAS is one of the partners. The CCA has shown that, the coalition has shown that SLCPs are not the only pollutants. This coalition has enormously supported the amendment of Kigali, the progressive elimination HFCs, which is a gas which has a great effect on global warming, particularly in use of refrigerators. And so the aims of the Paris Accords on climate change, which aim to reduce global warming gases before 2030 of 1 to 1.5 degrees. SLC could avoid, reducing SLCPs could avoid losing 2.5 million lives before 2050. And it could also reduce public health costs and reduce poverty. There is a real opportunity here. With a reduction which will be much greater than CO2, can make a huge difference, a rapid difference, reduce anthropic production of methane before 2030, and use the and help us to hit the target of 1.5 degrees. Under this initiative, the Commission of ECOWAS will continue to support, and that is why today's reunion meeting has for object an exchange on regional basis in order to support and reinforce the efforts linked to the reduction of SLCPs in countries members of ECOWAS, and to support processes on a regional. I hope for my part that all the presentations and exchanges will enable us all to hit that target. And on this happy note, I hope that these exchanges will be fruitful. I thank you. I declare this meeting, webinar on the planification and reduction of SLCPs open. For Ghana. And I hope that you will successfully implement the results of your work. I thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Legomoussa, pour votre intervention. Je vous remercie de nouveau et
Thank you very much for your intervention.
Rester pour le reste de l'événement.
I encourage you to stay for the rest of the event.
I would like to now turn to our next guest and keynote speaker, Dr. Richard Munang, the Regional Coordinator, Climate Change and Deputy Regional Director, OIC of the United Nations Environment Programme, Africa Office. Welcome, Dr. Munang.
Yeah, thank you very much, Catalina, and thanks to everyone who is present and the representative of member states and dignitaries. Good afternoon, and it's a great pleasure to be part of these discussions today and accept greetings from our acting regional director, Frank Turatunga, who for other assignments was unable to attend. All of us here today must have engaged in the most fundamental self-preservation exercise, cooking and eating. Now imagine just a scenario where you inadvertently sign your death certificate each time you engage in this necessary life activity. Sadly, this is the reality of about 248,000 people across the West African region who lose their lives every year because of indoor pollution, the soot and black carbon, short-lived climate pollutants emanating from their cooking are choking their lives. It does not get any sadder than having an activity that is supposed to sustain life and of extinguishing life. But indoor pollution is not the only risk. Imagine risking your life simply by breathing. An estimated 1,200 people in the West Africa region's lives prematurely are lost simply for breathing ambient air. Ambient air pollution emanating from the transport, waste, and industrial sector is a leading risk factor. The economic cost of this risk exceeds $1 billion each year. Closely related to pollution is climate change because the significant sources of greenhouse gases are also significant sources of air polluting emissions. For example, an estimated 80% of the population uses unclean biomass for cooking. This practice, however, degrades forests, resulting in increased land-based emissions and reduced capacity of forests to buffer against the high-intensity weather events, such as floods. A 30-year satellite study has found that West Africa is experiencing a 30 to 100% increase in storm intensity because of increased forest degradation. This is an issue that we cannot take lightly. And this has increased many storms than was experienced 30 years ago. And this reality means that air pollution and climate change needs to be addressed together. Last year at COP26, the Global Methane Pledge was launched. Participants joining the pledge have agreed to take voluntary actions to contribute to a collective effort to reduce global methane emissions by at least 30% from 2020 levels by 2030, which could reduce over 0.2 degrees of the estimated global warming by 2050 and generate significant health food security benefits. This call for an integrated approach, integrated strategies that sustainably reduce these short-lived climate pollutants, climate adaptation benefits also achieved. Accordingly, I work within the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, a global coalition of more than 150 state and non-state partners committed to taking action on short-lived climate pollutants seeks to answer one fundamental question: what strategies are most effective at reducing short-lived climate pollutants, including methane, and achieving simultaneous climate change and health benefits for a particular country or continent? Our deliberations today will be to answer this fundamental question. We will hear about experiences from Ghana, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Benin, and Togo to include short-lived climate pollutants in their updated NDCs. Among other experiences we can learn from them. As we get underway, three core factors need to form the pillars of our deliberation. First, our actions must align with achieving a just transition within the framework of net zero commitments. And I will illustrate this with an example. Nigeria, the largest economy in this sub-region, and Africa lose over 97,000 acres of its forest in 2020 alone, largely driven by charcoal cooking. At the same time, over 200,000 lives were lost in 2016 because of household air pollution. In addition, despite having 2.7% of the global population, the country contributes a mere 0.36% of global carbon dioxide emissions. These facts alone make the just transition away from charcoal and biomass an urgent imperative. To do this, the country that has pledged to achieve net zero emissions by 2060, which is a fossil fuel exporter and holds the 9th largest natural gas reserve globally, can invest in natural gas as a transition fuel as opposed to expanding fossil fuel subsidies on kerosene. Part of the $7 billion expended on these subsidies can go to investing in clean energy sources, in natural gas, for example, as a transition fuel, which can reduce up to 42% fewer emissions or nearly all types of air pollution and carbon dioxide than burning coal or petroleum products to produce an equal amount of energy. The second is we must tap the informal sector investments to drive this just transition. Charcoal burning is a significant livelihood activity in West Africa. In some countries, wood charcoal generates more income for the local people than granite, than cocoa and palm oil. How incentives can be put in place to redirect investments of these informal sector actors to prioritize cleaner, more affordable alternatives, such as fuel briquettes and biogas, needs to be a critical aspect that you should be able to discuss also today. And that takes me to the third point, which is we must build on already established successes, from instituting national air quality standards and regulations to acting in key sectors that are leading sources of short-lived climate pollutants, transport, open air waste burning, indoor pollution, and industry in all these countries in the region have put in place actions, programs, policy, laws, and regulations to improve air quality and combat short-lived climate pollutants. For example, 5 out of the 17 countries in the sub-region have established ambient air quality standards. 3 countries have invested in expanding public transport, and some have enhanced vehicle emission standards to minimize transport emissions. Other countries have legislation prohibiting open burning of waste and vegetable residues, in addition to policies and legislation for municipal waste collection and management, all to minimize waste emissions. 3 countries in the very region have put in place incentives to increase investments in energy efficiency, clean technology, renewable energy, and pollution control towards reducing industrial scale emissions. All these are already ongoing actions that need to be looked into detailedly, so the actions of this program target bridging gaps to further enhance these successes and cross-hybridize and share lessons between countries. In addition to your deliberations today, deliberating the above aspects, we will also hear preliminary results from the forthcoming CCAC Africa Assessment of Air Pollution and Climate Change Mitigation, focusing on short-lived climate pollutants. emission reduction pathways. This assessment will identify key actions that countries in the region can take to maximize benefits for our health while mitigating climate change and increasing our adaptation and resilience to its impacts. The assessment is being undertaken as a partnership between CCAC, African Union Commission, SEI, and UNEP Regional Office for Africa. I'm looking forward to the presentations and discussions that will be presented by countries to advance implementation opportunities for reducing short-lived climate pollutants in West Africa and to work together towards a regional approach to scale of action. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Munang, for your words. Very inspiring and also highlighting the challenges that need to be addressed, but also the actions that are already underway in the regions. And just for all participants to know, as you know, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition is hosted at the United Nations Environment Programme. So we do seek to further, a regional collaboration with the support of UNEP's Africa office. So thank you very much, Dr. Munang, and we too hope that you can stay as much as you can during this event.
Thank you.
And with this, I would like to now turn over to segment 1, which is on supporting SLCP national action planning, policy and implementation. This is really the core of CCAC's work under its 2030 strategy. And therefore, we are pleased to introduce Benjamin Brida from Côte d'Ivoire, from the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development. He is CCAC coordinator, but is also represents Côte d'Ivoire as co-lead to the supporting National Action Planning Hub of the CCAC. Over to you, Benjamin. Do we still have Benjamin Brida connected? Okay, we seem to have lost Benjamin. So I would like to recommend that we move forward, and when he reconnects, we can turn back to his introductory remarks as co-lead to the National Action Planning Hub. Therefore, I would like to now
Ben
yes.
is just reconnected.
Okay, that's excellent. Welcome back, Ben. I'm glad you were able to reconnect. Please, Ben, I have just introduced you, and we look forward to some brief remarks on your part as representing Côte d'Ivoire as co-lead to the supporting National Action Planning Hub. Over to you, Ben, as we initiate segment 1. Thank you. Ben, could you please indicate if you are having connectivity issues via the chat?
Unfortunately, Ben has just dropped off again, Catalina.
Okay, well, we regret these technical issues, but I'm sure he will be back. So just to try to keep to schedule, I would like to now introduce Alice Quadja. Welcome, Alice. She is the co-chair for the Africa Integrated Assessment on Air Pollution and Climate Change, and will be providing some framing messages from the Africa Integrated Assessment on Air Pollution and Climate Change. Welcome, Alice. We are unable to hear you, Alice. You are still on mute.
Yeah, I was on mute and I'm trying to navigate. Thank you so much, Catalina, and good evening, good afternoon, all participants. Thank you so much for joining us here. Let me see how quickly I can set myself. Are you able to see my slide? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, we are able to see.
that well.
It's better now. It's on a slideshow mode.
Yes.
Yeah, so I will be making a brief presentation on the integrated assessment on air pollution and climate change with the focus of development in Africa. Briefly, I will cover the scenarios that are embedded in the assessment. And I'm glad Johan and Chris are here. These are the lead modelers that we have from the Stockholm Environment Institute. I think Dr. Munang already indicated that this is a partnership between CCAC, the African Union Commission, the UNEP Regional Office for Africa, and Stockholm Environment Institute. And of course, all the regional economic commissions of Africa are engaged in this process. I'll share some preliminary results. And then I think just as the outline indicates, and have some summary. I was cautioned that this is a bilingual conference, so I'll try as much as possible to speak slowly. So, but to begin with, let me share this slide, which is looking at the air quality regulations framework. We find that in Africa, most countries do not have legal instruments containing ambient air quality standards. And this is very critical because, I mean, without policies and laws, we are not able to actually take effective action to combat air pollution. So when we look at SNAP process, I just want to encourage ourselves that we find that West Africa, we want to congratulate that region for being very strong in working through SNAP to have action plans and policies to address short-lived climate pollutants reduction. And when I counted, 10 out of the 16 countries are actually from West Africa, although others from Southern and Eastern Africa are also coming up. But the key thing is that this assessment aims at enhancing capacity for the use of long-term national planning across the region for integrated pollution and climate change strategies. So why did we need this assessment, which is a nexus between air pollution, climate change, and development in Africa? Number one, we recognize that there have been, at the global level, there have been various United Nations Environment Assembly resolutions that touch on the need to promote programs that tackle air quality, as well as the World Health Assembly resolutions. We make reference to this as one of the reasons why the assessment was undertaken. When we come to the scientific side of it, we find that the short-lived climate forces have actually been recognized by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and they have made a decision to develop methodologies to enable countries to establish emission inventories. And I use this slide to emphasize that the assessment is actually a scientific assessment that will interface with policy and action. At the regional level, Africa is pursuing the ambition of Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. And one of the aspirations is to develop, facilitate the implementation of Africa air quality standards for air and other forms of pollution. And I think the main goal really is to ensure that we are environmentally sustainable and we are pursuing a climate resilient economies and communities. And at the African Ministerial Conference on the Environment, there was a decision 17.2 of 2019, where again, as you can see from this decision, there was the urging of countries to take action to reduce short-lived climate pollutants from the environment, agriculture, health, and forest sector, while responding to aspirations of Agenda 2063. Again, these are linked because our main vision is the Africa we want, which is in the Agenda 2063. We find that at the national level, including SLCPs in the NDCs has been advocated for, and quite a number of countries have done so, so that we are able to meet our obligations under UNFCCC, the Paris Agreement, and the SDG targets. So what are the scenarios that were used for the assessment? There were three. Number one is the baseline, where Africa is heading under the current policies and trends. And when we make reference to the current policies, we call them brown development, the business as usual, as was being explained even by some of the opening remarks, is that we are destroying our forests and still cooking with dirty fuels and so on, poor transport sectors and so on. That is the current scenario. But then we are also saying, supposing we take action to reduce short-lived climate pollutants and pursue air quality abatement measures and add this to the baseline scenario, what kind of improvements would we be seeing? And what would be the policy implications? And then the third, which is the real aspiration, is a transformation pathway, which is intended to address climate, air pollution, the SDGs, and Agenda 2063 concurrently. And as I continue with this presentation, I will make more reference to the Agenda 2063 scenario, because that is where we want to be. So in the interest of time, I will not present a lot on the other scenarios. And we will address any questions that come over after that. So what are the results? What we find is that these are the key messages which are coming up. We find that air pollution and climate are major challenges facing Africa as a continent, and both issues cannot be dealt with separately from development. In other words, when we are tackling SLCP reduction, climate change issues, air pollution issues, they should be in a nexus with development. We find that there's high urbanization, and this is intensifying air pollution, and the intensification is linked to the transport, land degradation, and poor waste management practices. Domestic energy for cooking, as Dr. Munang was saying, we kill ourselves by cooking with the wood fuel, and it is found that using charcoal and firewood will still be predominant in the foreseeable future, especially in both in urban and rural settings. So the graphical presentation of these results, I may not go into the details, but these are the key messages that we need to take into account and consider what are the policy implications for Africa. The mitigation measures that have been identified and validated by the modeling team include the following across all sectors. Number one, in the transport sector, it encourages electromobility, having vehicle emission standards, encouraging public transport. This should be with respect to how we design our roads, so that one streak of road is not for motorcycle, motor vehicle, pedestrians as it is at the moment, so that we have areas that can encourage active travel, that is non-motorized transport. When it comes to households, the promotion of efficient cleaner fuels and appliances for cooking is encouraged from the model results. At the industry, energy efficiency and switching to renewable fuels is a result that we need to focus on. As much as possible from electricity, we need to focus on renewable energy, for example, from hydropower, and reduce transmission and distribution losses. This is quite, the distribution and the transmission losses are quite rampant in Africa. In the oil and gas sector, reducing emissions and avoiding flaring are measures which are encouraged. And for agriculture sector, increased productivity, proper management of manure, efficient fertilizer use. I hope we still have fertilizer to use given the ongoing global scenario. Avoiding burning of crop residues and improving diets. By that, we are saying it is encouraged to switch more to vegetarian diets. And in the waste sector, capturing landfill gas, diversion of waste to composting, and we appreciate that a huge percentage of waste in Africa is actually organic and can be composted to manure and soil improving materials. And also reducing waste generation. This can be possible through other development approaches, for example, adopting circular economy and green economy. When we look at the total emissions across Africa from 2000 to 2063, which is in the baseline scenario, it is found that in the absolute terms, there'll be increase in GHG and SLCP and air pollutant emissions, which will be substantial. But the baseline scenario shows that having per capita emissions orders of magnitude will still be lower than the high income countries. And I think this is supported by the current evidence that Africa in general is a low emitter. What we are trying to avoid by pursuing this kind of development of reducing emissions is that we don't want to get in trouble in future to have remedial measures when we have over destroyed our environment. So we find that overall, against GDP, the emission intensity of Africa's economy is projected to decrease, and this is a very good message. Only if we take action, and collective action for that matter. When we look at the national total emissions between 2018 across Africa, disaggregated by geographic regions, these graphics can be, we look at the GHG, carbon dioxide, methane, and the black carbon. Overall, I'm not able to read this a bit, they're a bit weak for my weak eyes, but we find that there's going to be improvement with the, as I said, with collective action. The policy scenarios, we find that when modeling was undertaken, each scenario was built up as a package of measures targeting the energy and non-energy sectors. I think when we have discussed, we have found that the energy sector is a key sector for us to focus on. There are 21 energy sector measures, 8 for transport, 5 for household, and 10, more than 10 for the other sectors. The SLCP scenario consists of 9 measures which focus on mitigation, and the Agenda 2063 scenario, which includes all the measures combined. Looking at the global warming potential, I think when I was reading this, when we look at these slides, we find that just focusing on the Agenda 2063 scenario, we find that it is better to have this combination of action with a green graph so that we go to the reduced CO2 equivalent reductions. I think there's been a highlight of methane, particularly in the light of decisions from COP26. And we find that, again, from Agenda 2063 scenario, for all sectors Africa-wide combined, we will be able to achieve some reductions. Particulate matter, black carbon, a major problem, especially as we continue, as it was highlighted in the key messages, we will continue to depend on wood fuel. And you find that again, the results are strongly encouraging that we take a closer look at all sectors combined, but specific sectors will have higher emissions, particularly from the agriculture, forestry, and other land uses. And that would be expected because in Africa, we tend to have this practice of open burning of agricultural residues, cutting down forests, and also practicing open grazing, large-scale grazing of livestock, which leads to degradation of land spaces and therefore wind erosion. The household energy demand, when we break down by type of fuel, comparing urban versus rural, we find that, and also by type of end use, there will continue to be dependency on wood fuel for cooking, and the demand will increase, but we find that by 2063, the urban and rural scenarios are almost balancing, but there's still higher demand from the urban because, again, as we had said, there's rapid urbanization. When we look at the specific benefits to the climate under the Agenda 2063 scenario, still Africa will be emitting very little compared to the global space. At the regional scale, however, there is statistically significant temperature and precipitation responses to the Agenda 2063 scenario of Africa relative to the baseline. But I think these results really require policy focus, because when we say there is widespread reduction in warming across Northern and Central Africa, that's very important to focus on. Seasonally, local avoided warming is greatest in winter months of North and Southern Africa. And emission reductions strongly mitigate the drying projected in West, East, and Central Africa during June to August in Southern Africa, and during January to March under the baseline scenario. I think what is worth noting is that the modeling shows that climate benefits will be much larger if the action is taken globally, but not just in Africa. With regards to health benefits of reduced PM exposure outdoors, that is ambient air, the projected trends in population-weighted PM exposure under the 3 scenarios for the 5 African regions. I think the graphs are a bit too crowded to read through, but I think the key thing is that the results show large health benefits of switching household exposure in switching fuel in the indoor air pollution situation. In other words, basically, we need to reduce indoor air pollution. Overall, in summary, there are clear benefits on reducing the SLCPs and the GHGs in an integrated framework. These results provide a strong incentive for countries to take up the SNAP support system. Particular attention to be paid to sources of energy, transport, household clean cooking, and management of all types of waste. And that Africa should intensify efforts to develop and implement integrated policies, related laws on air pollution, climate change, development in an integrated framework. And the key focus now, and I think this will come from our workshop today, is for countries to seek supporting countries to finance the implementation of the recommended measures in each of the sectors. Thank you very much. I think the Africa we want is really within reach if we take an integrated approach to tackling air pollution, climate change, and development in Africa. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Alice, for giving us an overview and summary of some of the initial results from the Africa assessment, as well as next steps. I would now like to turn over to Serafine Hauslin, Program Officer of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, that will be co-presenting CCAC's work on national planning with Chris Smalley from the Stockholm Environment Institute. So welcome, Serafine and Chris.
Thank you very much, Catalina, and good afternoon to all the participants of this webinar today. I'm very excited. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we hear you well.
Sorry. Yes, I'm very excited to be in this webinar today. You know, ECOWAS countries are really a leader in national planning efforts. So, I just wanted to give you first an overview of our national planning work, and then Chris is going to take over to highlight some of those key achievements in the region. So, Chris, if you could move to the next slide. National planning is really, it's a central part of our work in the CCAC, also as Katerina has highlighted, and also of our new strategy that was adopted in December 2020. Within this, our planning approach, integrated planning approach, we work directly with countries to strengthen their capacity to understand the sources of the SLCP emissions and also what the impacts are on health and climate, but also to then identify and prioritize mitigation measures. And a very strong focus now, as also Alice just highlighted, is really now on the implementation of those priority measures, and then also on monitoring those SLCP mitigation measures. And as part of this new strategy that the CCAC launched last year, that is going until 2030, there are now 6 sectoral engagement strategies and the planning engagement strategy, and those are really focused on the main emitting sources of SLCPs. And those hubs that have just been launched are based on those engagement strategies and are really set up as communities of practice, of really exchanging on best practices, on assessments, on latest methodologies and approaches. So the goal of the national planning engagement strategy is that by 2030, all CCAC partners, so I'm really highlighting here that it's really encompassing all partners, then today we have more than 70, that they have further integrated their air quality and climate planning agendas, and that they also have implemented mitigation actions. So we have set a number of milestones by 2025, and those aim at encouraging that those integrated air quality and climate plans are developed at national and also subnational levels. And maybe also Chris can then talk more about that, and it's also Ghana on the efforts that are underway for Accra. And those plans identify mitigation actions up to 2030. But then there are also finance strategies and implementation pathways in place for those prioritized mitigation measures. That there is a strong engagement at high political level to advance planning, policy and implementation. And through the hub, there is really a platform to share those best practices and tools and methodologies and really latest scientific guidance. And all of this work will be, of course, based on getting support on developing improved emission inventories that are informing those the prioritization of mitigation measures, that there are also emission projections up to 2030, 2040, 2050, that there is support in developing implementation pathways and engaging implementers right from the beginning in this effort, and that there's also promotion of to link within and between the relevant government ministries that are responsible for implementing SLCP mitigation measures. So I also want to highlight that there is support in the CCAC for ODA eligible countries to do those assessments and to also support implementation pathways and also implementation of measures. So we are also actually about to issue a call for proposal next month that responds to some of the priorities and needs that countries have put forward to advance SLCP mitigation measures. one point I just wanted to also make here is that there is the hub. There's now a dedicated hub that, and Ben is the co-lead of this planning hub. And the hub has really been set up to develop activities, mitigation activities, to identify funding opportunities, to really foster peer-to-peer engagement and exchange and communicate on best practices on effective SLCP mitigation strategies. So just one point also on the GMP, as Richard also mentioned, that so the CCAC is one core implementing partner of the Global Methane Pledge. And in that function, it will work very closely with GMP participating countries to support national methane planning and actions. And this support is also very much integrated into the national planning work of on SLCPs, and it's really building on this now decade of experience on national planning. So if you could move to the next slide. So this is a very busy slide. It's just, I just wanted to show a bit the different areas that our national planning work is engaging with. So really at the top, we have the very strong focus on strengthening capacity, and this is really being done through training, so this peer-to-peer engagement, also through institutional strengthening. And we in the CCAC, there are also now resources available and to support national experts in the ministries to really drive this work within the relevant ministry, but also to ensure this interministerial coordination and to really push the agenda on SLCP mitigation. And so under this National Planning Hub, we will also be engaging with several processes, so and really seek to mainstream SLCPs into those processes. So there is, of course, the NDC updates. There's also the long-term strategies, and it's really about also the raising the ambition levels there and to leverage the CCAC approach in those different processes. Then we will work with a number of partnerships and champions to support mitigation strategies and to advocate SLCP mitigation. And then there is a strong focus also on tools and methodologies. So the CCAC has been developing a number of guidance, and so there it's the focus really like to continue improving and applying those tools to inform decision-making processes on mitigation strategies. And lastly, like this very strong focus on implementation. So there will be we have those sectoral hubs now, and so there will be a lot of support now on implementing those priority measures that have been identified through the planning process. So this is there will be very strong focus on that, on really moving now from planning and assessing really into this implementation phase, and then to achieve those necessary emission reductions. So I just want to, before I'm handing over to Chris to really talk about some of those key achievements in the region, I just want to wish you a very successful workshop, and I'm really looking forward also to the discussion on identifying regional approaches to upscale mitigation efforts across ECOWAS countries. But I would also like to emphasize how this regional approach in ECOWAS can really be an example for other regions and a model, and so that we would be really happy to also promote that in other regions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Seraphine. I don't think I need to spend very much time on my intervention, because I think it's much more useful to hear from the other presenters that we have. The one point that I would like to make is that the new engagement strategy, the new ambitious engagement strategy that the Climate and Clean Air Coalition put forward and that Seraphine just described, is possible because of the work, largely because of the work that has been done across West Africa and because of ECOWAS country participation in the CCAC. When we look at the countries that are leading on integrating short-lived climate pollutants into their planning, Time and time again, we see countries in the ECOWAS region as being the best examples that we can show to other countries around the world as to how short-lived climate pollutant mitigation can be increased up the political agenda and how priorities can be identified and evaluated. To just give you 3 examples before I finish, Nigeria was the first country in the world to include within its nationally determined contribution a quantitative statement of the health benefits that its climate change commitment would achieve. 30,000 premature deaths, 30,000 Nigerian premature deaths could be avoided by 2030 from the implementation of Nigeria's climate change plan. Ghana soon followed. 2,900 Ghanaian premature deaths could be avoided from implementation of their climate change plan. And we also have similar results in Côte d'Ivoire. This really highlights that climate change plans are not only plans to achieve international global temperature targets, but are local health plans to improve the lives of populations in the countries that take the climate change action. And I think this is a fantastic example to the world. The second area where I think ECOWAS is really leading is in targets that specifically focus on short-lived climate pollutants. In Togo, in Côte d'Ivoire, in Ghana, Nigeria, and Benin, as we will see, their climate change plans specifically identify the reductions that will occur in short-lived climate pollutants and air pollutants alongside their greenhouse gases. We also have specific targets on those major short-lived climate pollutant emission source sectors. For example, emission reduction targets from fugitive oil and gas, methane emissions in Nigeria, Ghana, and Côte d'Ivoire. And finally, I think the region also leads in the monitoring of short-lived climate pollutants within their climate change MR3 frameworks. It's very good to have targets, but if we can't assess how those targets are moving as they are implemented, then we don't know whether we're on the right track. Ghana for many years has been including specific chapters on short-lived climate pollutant emissions in its national greenhouse gas inventory, in its national inventory reports, biennial update reports, and national communications. I think if more countries included tracking of short-lived climate pollutants in their greenhouse gas reporting, we'd have a much better idea of where we are collectively on dealing with the challenge of short-lived climate pollutants and achieving the health benefits from climate change action. So I really look forward to hearing the examples in the following presentations of how ECOWAS West African countries are leading on short-lived climate pollutants. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chris and Serafine, for the overview of CCAC's work on national planning, as well as the opportunities that we are here to discuss on, regional approaches, and thank you for highlighting the leadership role that countries in the region of West Africa have taken. Before we move forward, I just want to make sure that the translation is still functioning for everybody. Could we please test? I can speak, and I just want to make sure that the French translation is still functioning. If someone could please confirm. Maybe if I could ask the interpreters if maybe there's a break that's occurring, just to ensure that before we move forward, the function is working, because I could not hear it for Chris's intervention. Chris, could you please confirm if you hear it on your end?
When I select the French channel, I can't hear any French.
Me neither. So Please bear with us as we just figure that out just for a moment, as the next session will be important. Yes, there's. Is this maybe connected to the audio of the interpreters that may require them to reconnect?
Catalina, would you mind saying some words in French to see whether the English is also working?
Yes. Oui, bonjour, je m'appelle Catalina. Bienvenue à l'événement.
Unfortunately, I'm not hearing that either.
Okay.
Catalina, I'm going to end the interpretation and restart it to see if that helps us.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. Please let us know when it's reinstated.
The interpretation has been ended and has now restarted. So I hope if we select the French channel, we might be able to hear. I'll continue speaking in English to see if that is being picked up or not.
No, I'm unable to hear the French. Please bear with us as we just figure this out. I will send you a chat, Chris. One moment.
So we're going to try again. Catalina, if you can go to the French channel. I think Liz is now going to try and translate translate what I'm saying into French to see if we can pick up.
Très bien, je traduis ce que c'est Chris qui vous parle. Ça marche.
Fantastic.
Merci.
Très bien.
Okay, excellent. So thank you very much for everyone's patience. So we are now heading into segment 2 on country experiences on the approach for including short-lived climate pollutants into national planning processes. And we are delighted to introduce our first speaker. Hopefully he has been able to reconnect. Although I do not see him on the panel, so apologies. We will actually we will wait for Côte d'Ivoire to reconnect to the session as it seems they're having difficulties. And we would like to turn over to Togo's experience. So we would like to introduce Buluwe Sankucha, CCAC focal point from the Environment Direction. Bienvenue, Monsieur Sankucha.
Bonjour, madame.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, chers tous. Est-ce que vous m'écoutez? Vous m'entendez?
Oui, très bien, merci.
D'accord, merci. Bonjour, chers tous. Est-ce que vous pouvez m'envoyer la slide?
Non, pas encore. Si vous pouvez partager votre écran, sinon on peut essayer de notre côté. Un instant.
On peut partager l'écran. Comment ça se fait?
Monsieur Sankucha, est-ce que vous pouvez partager votre écran ou est-ce que vous préférez qu'on le fasse pour notre
Nous sommes en train de le faire et comment ça on va évoluer? On va détruire. Ça va aller. C'est un coup. Ah, oui, ça arrive, c'est un coup. Bon, je vais commencer en attendant que ça arrive. Bonjour, chers tous. Je suis Sankucha Buluwe, point focal de la coalition pour le climat et l'air pur. Je vais vous faire rapidement, bon, puisque j'ai 10 minutes, une présentation sur l'expérience du Togo sur l'approche SLCP dans le processus de planification.
Merci, Monsieur Sankucha. Je vous confirme que je partage maintenant votre présentation. Vous devrez justement signaler quand j'ai besoin de passer à d'autres. Oui.
D'accord, merci. C'est trop grand, les filles vont partir. Il faut...
Oui,
en
Monsieur
effet,
Sankucha, avancez s'il vous plaît.
Le Togo est un pays ouest-africain de 56 600 km. C'est bon, c'est clair?
Oui, c'est clair.
Tout comme les autres pays, le Togo n'échappe pas à la dynamique climatique actuelle, c'est-à-dire le changement actuel.
Monsieur Sankucha, on ne vous écoute pas. On ne vous écoute pas.
Nous avons perdu la connexion entre-temps.
Oui. Oui, on vous écoute maintenant, mais...
C'est pourquoi le Togo... Oui.
Continuez, s'il vous plaît. On va voir si on vous écoute encore.
C'est bon?
Oui, c'est un peu mieux. Merci.
C'est pourquoi le Togo fait de la lutte contre... C'est pourquoi le Togo fait de la lutte contre le changement climatique une priorité. C'est justement dans cette dynamique que le Togo a adhéré à la coalition pour le climat et l'air pur en mars 2014. Et avec l'appui de cette coalition, la CCAC, le Togo a élaboré puis validé en janvier 2019 son plan de des polluants atmosphériques et climatiques de courte durée de vie, s'engageant ainsi à contribuer à la santé.
Excusez-moi, Monsieur Sankucha, la connexion, je ne vous écoute pas. Je veux confirmer avec mes collègues s'ils peuvent vous écouter. Séraphine, Chris?
Non, pas très bien. On ne vous entend pas très bien, Monsieur Sankucha. Et aussi, je pense qu'il n'y a pas de traduction.
Nous avons des problèmes de connexion. Une pluie est tombée ce matin à Lomé et puis on a des problèmes de connexion.
Ah, là, on vous entend bien.
D'accord. D'accord. Donc, je disais que nous allons énumérer le plan. Nous allons énumérer les principales sources d'émissions, leur progression probable en 2040, les mesures identifiées pour atténuer ces émissions et leur niveau d'ambition, le potentiel d'atténuation de ces mesures, la démarche entreprise pour leur inclusion dans les plans de développement. Et enfin, nous allons brièvement faire cas des besoins du Togo pour leur mise en œuvre.
S'il vous plaît, Monsieur Sankucha, pourriez-vous me dire si j'avance avec la présentation? Je suis sur la deuxième diapositive. Est-ce que j'avance?
Donc, c'est vous qui a... Non, c'est nous.
C'est moi. C'est de mon côté. J'ai partagé mon écran.
D'accord, donc on revient encore.
Est-ce que j'avance?
C'est bon. Non, elle est sur le... Bon, venez sur le 5e slide, s'il vous plaît.
Sur le 5e, OK. Un instant, s'il vous plaît. Oui, c'est celui-là.
C'est bon. D'accord. Les principales sources d'émissions des SLCP, elles proviennent de 4 secteurs. Les secteurs énergie, agriculture, déchets et foresterie. Et ces SLCP sont émises, sont entre autres, les SLCP émises sont entre autres le carbone noir, le carbone organique, les particules fines, le monoxyde de carbone, le méthane, l'ammoniac, le dioxyde de soufre, les composés organiques, les oxydes d'azote et bien sûr, naturellement, le CO2 qui ne fait pas quand même partie des SCP. Est-ce que vous pouvez envoyer slide? Allô?
Oui. Oui, on peut voir. Monsieur Sankucha, on peut voir le slide. Est-ce que je suis sur le correct?
Nous sommes sur le grand 2, progression probable, donc 6e slide. Allô? Allô?
Oui, on est sur le slide.
Oui, nous sommes sur le 6e slide. Hein?
Oui, je suis sur le 6e slide.
Il faut que je me repère parce que...
Progression probable en 2040.
Voilà.
OK.
OK. Selon les scénarios de base réalisés, nous avons considéré 3 polluants atmosphériques et climatiques. Et selon le scénario, les émissions vont croître naturellement sans la mise en œuvre d'aucune mesure d'atténuation. Ainsi, les émissions de carbone noir vont croître jusqu'à 8,61 kilotonnes jusqu'à 2040. Celles des particules fines vont accroître également jusqu'à 62,58 kilotonnes en 2040 et celles du méthane vont progresser jusqu'à 290 kilotonnes. C'est juste les 3 polluants atmosphériques que nous avons choisis. Il y a d'autres, mais si on veut continuer, on sera très long. Nous allons maintenant parler des mesures d'atténuation qui peuvent réduire ces émissions. Au total, un nouveau slide, s'il vous plaît. Les mesures d'atténuation. Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui, on
Oui,
vous entend, Monsieur Sankuchal.
Oui, c'est juste important que vous disiez quand j'ai besoin d'avancer le slide.
D'accord.
Merci.
9e slide. Les mesures d'atténuation.
Oui.
C'est bon?
Avancez, s'il vous plaît. Oui.
D'accord. Lors de l'élaboration du plan, au total, 14 mesures ont été identifiées. 11 sont inscrites dans l'ancienne CDN. 3 autres, dénommées CDN+, ont été identifiées pour réduire davantage les émissions et accroître l'ambition d'améliorer la qualité de l'air. Ces 3 mesures sont notamment les mesures supplémentaires, sont l'adoption des normes d'émission pour les véhicules Euro 1, Euro 2, Euro 3, Euro 4, l'amélioration des techniques de carbonisation, la gestion et la gestion des déchets et la gestion efficace des déchets municipaux. Slide 10. C'est 11. Hein? Vous avez parlé de 5. Non, pas encore. Slide 11. Nous sommes au slide 11. Est-ce que vous me suivez?
Quel est le titre du slide, s'il vous plaît?
11.
Oui, le secteur d'énergie.
Oui, le secteur et les mesures d'atténuation. Le secteur énergie.
Oui. Oui, s'il vous plaît, avancez.
Oui, slide 9, le secteur énergie.
Oui, on est sur le secteur d'énergie. Est-ce que vous voyez l'écran?
Oui, je vois l'écran. Slide 9.
C'est celui-là, non? C'est le secteur d'énergie.
Oui, le secteur d'énergie. Oui, slide 9. Nous sommes au slide 9. Il faut agrandir ça pour que je puisse bien voir. Voilà. Les mesures CDN, CDN+, sont présentées dans les tableaux ci-dessous. En fait, c'est l'ensemble de ces mesures-là, les 11 plus les 3 qui font 14. D'abord, dans le secteur énergie, le résidentiel, il y a...
In the energy sector, we need to popularize gas and wood cooking methods and promote public lighting. We need to reduce consumption of fossil fuels in the transport sector by 20%. This is in the previous contribution, and we need to adopt vehicle emission standards. In the agriculture sector, that's slide number 10. Are you following me? Are you following me? Yes, I hope you can see the screen, Mr. Sangwichi. Okay. And these sectors include improving animal feed, management of manure, recycling agricultural waste, reducing agricultural waste burning, and reducing generally crop burning. In terms of waste, we need to manage municipal waste more efficiently, and also we need to ensure that private forests are better managed from this point of view. Now you can see here we've looked at mitigation measures and their level and the level of ambition of those undertaking measures. Firstly, if you look at popularizing different methods of cooking, we hope that by 2030 there'll be 30% more, and by 2040 there'll be 90% more in the Lomé area using LPG. And we think that in rural areas, the figures will be more like 10% in 2030 and 50% in 2040. And now we continue. And in order to use time more usefully, we will move on to 13, number 13.
Oui, pas tellement avec le numéro de le slide, mais si vous pouvez juste dire avancer, avancer. Est-ce que je suis bien là ou j'avance?
Oui, nous sommes au slide 13. Puisque j'ai juste donné.
Now we're on slide number 13. I was just looking at the ambition of each area, the intended achievement. This is, you got it right. This is the slide. Okay, let's look at the potential for mitigating measures. What would their potential be? There are two different scenarios via LEAP, the LEAP tool. The national contribution potential and the national contribution plus, which we've evaluated separately. So we thought designed the CDN Plus in order to have a maximum of potential for our actions. Slide 14, please. We're on slide 14, where it begins the diagram. Just to list these mitigation measures. So these will bring a significant reduction of short-term climate pollutants. So we've got three different scenarios for this. For black carbon, the mitigation measures are are shown on the brown line. The blue curve shows what we're doing in Togo to reduce these emissions. And it's progressing well, as I said. The nationally determined contribution is the red curve. And if we put these extra measures, additional measures, on top of the others, there will be a big reduction. I hope you're following.
Oui, on vous entend.
We can hear.
Nous sommes à la slide, bon, slide 15.
Now slide 15.
Slide 15.
Slide 15, please.
Oui, je viens de faire ce commentaire-là et j'ai expliqué la mise en œuvre des mesures CDN et
I'm just telling my colleague what I've already explained to you.
Nous sommes au slide 16, la réduction des émissions de particules.
Now slide 16.
Est-ce que vous me suivez?
Can you hear me?
Oui, je vous suis. Oui. Est-ce que vous voyez l'écran?
Oui, je vois l'écran.
Can you see the screen? Yes, I can see the screen.
La réduction des émissions de particules.
The reduction to reduce emissions of particulate matter. Here we are, it's a diagram.
Okay. Donc c'est
Fine.
le même commentaire, la courbe là
Same system.
la réduction, l'atténuation des émissions de particules fines.
The mitigation of emissions of fine particles.
La courbe bleue représente le baseline si aucune mesure.
Blue curve is a baseline,
Les émissions de particules fines vont
which shows how particle matter emissions would progress.
Les émissions sont représentées par
With the CDN, you can see that the red curve shows the emissions level.
on met en œuvre les trois mesures supplémentaires.
And when you put all the, and if you add the other three measures, you can see the curve going down significantly.
Slide 18.
Slide 18, 18.
Puisque après le graphique, il en suit une courbe. Il en suit un commentaire et le commentaire, je viens de le dire déjà.
There, after the diagram, there's a commentary. Slide 16,
Slide 18.
slide 18.
Oui. C'est un graphique
This is a diagram
sur le méthane.
about methane.
Est-ce que vous me suivez?
Sur le graphique.
Can you hear?
Allô?
Oui.
Oui, exact. Donc c'est
Yes,
la même chose.
this is the same
Met en œuvre
idea.
l'atténuation. Est-ce que
When you put in place the mitigation measures,
les méthanes sont rabattus par rapport au
methane
qui représente
methane emissions are reduced close to the baseline. And when you put the additional three measures into force, methane emissions are also significantly reduced.
le commentaire qui suit la
In
courbe
the
que je viens de
comments in the next slide, I'll try and go
Parfait,
quickly.
Monsieur Sankucha. Est-ce qu'on a quelques minutes pour finaliser?
We've still got a
Est-ce
few
qu'on peut passer à la
moments.
suivante?
Do you want me to go on to the next slide? Yes, please.
Pardon? Là.
There.
Maintenant, nous sommes sur la démarche. La démarche entreprise.
Okay, this is what steps we'll take. Slide 20.
Okay. La démarche entreprise pour inclure les mesures d'atténuation des SLP dans les plans de.
So this is what we've done to include mitigation measures in our national development plan. We've adopted a participative approach.
Allô? Est-ce que vous me suivez?
Can you hear?
Oui, on est sur le slide de la démarche.
Yes, we're on the next step slide.
Pour inclure les SLP
To
dans les plans
include SLCPs in the plan,
empruntés, il s'agit d'une démarche
we've taken a different approach, a participatory approach, which consisted in involving ministries in the process and also the key actors and the representatives of all stakeholders, civil society, organizations, local authorities.
Il a fallu aussi
all joined in. We also constructed a partnership with different parts of Togo in order to achieve our goals. Could we move to the next slide, please? Slide 22. Unfortunately, because of technical problems, we need to move towards the end. I'll just speak briefly about what we need to do. This is the last slide, 23. Thank you. What does Togo need? We need help to reduce SLCP emissions. Also, we need help in building capacities for stakeholders and players. We need help to implement our mitigation measures in the areas where emissions come from in all sorts of activity, especially reducing methane. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Sankucha. I'm so sorry that there have been technical problems. Thank you for agreeing to go rapidly through your presentation on Togo's experience, and thank you very much for participating. I hope you'll be able to stay for the rest of the seminar. I hope we will continue to work with Togo. Thank you. Thank you.
To all participants, thank you very much. We unfortunately have been experiencing technical issues, but therefore we ask the following participants, if you could please keep to the time of 7 minutes for your presentation. So I will first ask Chris to help me to stop sharing my screen, and in the meantime, I introduce
Je vais maintenant
Rida from Côte d'Ivoire.
présenter
He's
Monsieur
CCAC
Rida de la Côte
at the Ministry
d'Ivoire,
of Environment, and he will be presenting Côte d'Ivoire's experience.
Travaille dans le ministère de l'Environnement, qui va faire une présentation pour vous. Merci à tout le monde. J'espère que vous m'entendez bien. Je vais vous partager mon écran avec vous.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you all see my screen now?
Yes, we can, Ben. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the delay. I hope I'll be able to give this brief presentation and overview in time, and I won't have any technical problem with my internet. So this is just to give you a brief overview of Côte d'Ivoire planning experience on SLCP and the integration of this into climate policy making. So Côte d'Ivoire has been a member of this coalition since 2013 and been engaged in the SNAP initiative, but also other initiatives such as the Waste Initiative.
as part of our engagement in the SNAP initiatives, we're able to develop our first national plan, a plan which was developed over a period of 4 years by the Ministry of Environment under the Anti-Pollution Center. And this plan was approved in 2019, and it actually evaluates different policies and measures, SLCP, namely black carbon, methane, but also other pollutants and GHG. And it also covers key sources such as residential sector, transportation, agriculture, waste, and oil and gas. What these plans really contain and what are the key information that we had in the plan. It's 16 measures that are included in this plan that was agreed in consultation with stakeholders. It was a very participatory process. And those 16 measures, out of those 16 measures, you have 8 that target black carbon and 8 measures for targeting methane. The analysis undertaken as part of this plan were able to highlight the fact that black carbon could be reduced for up to 60 to 80% compared to a reference scenarios. And regarding methane, it's 34 to 50% reduction that could be achieved by implementing those 16 measures. It's also important to highlight the fact that this planning process is really was really an interactive process and embedded into multiple planning process at the national level, which is also something really important. Interaction with national communications, but also other important planning process such as low development emission strategy planning, and recently the NDC planning. And the process benefited also from the support of the coalition and the lead partner, which was very key for the achievement of those results. And another important point in the planning process is the implementation phase. So now we are moving toward implementation of this plan, which is articulated around 3 main points. The first part of the implementation is related to strengthening the overall coordination of the plan. And the second, and I think most important part of this implementation strategy is going to be the enhancement of the work with the sectors to reduce the SLCP, to support the implementation of a strong analysis, developing a funding proposal, and also tracking those mitigation actions. And I think last point, which is going to be discussed in the next slide, is also the integration of this plan into other cross-cutting plans, such as the National Development Plan, climate change planning, and air quality planning. So moving toward implementation of this plan, one of the first steps that Côte d'Ivoire engaged into was to mainstream those results, integrate this plan based on the experience that we have with SNAP into the climate change policy making. And with the support of additional partners, such as the NDC partnership, KIPE initiative, we're able to undertake a fully integrated analysis of GHG and SLCP, which allow the country to expand the measures that were analyzed through a kind of fully integrated analysis with the mapping of all these 38 measures, looking into overlap between the plans, lack of information, and also modeling constraints regarding to moving forward into the goal to highlight the potential for each categories of measures that could be easily implemented with clear implementation and institutional plan. We can call it the low-hanging fruit, or in our case, what we call the category 1 measures, but also additional measures that could be more ambitious, the second categories of measures. And this helps us to clearly identify different implementation pathways for the country's next NDCs. For example, you can see here on the chart the new pathways that were integrated into the new Côte d'Ivoire NDCs, the conditional and unconditional pathway, but also new what was new in this revised NDC for Côte d'Ivoire is the integration of the forestry sectors. So to be able to link all that together.
Voir lier tout ceci avec le cible convenu. Nous avons donc un nouvel engagement pour le pays de réduire les émissions de 30% et un cible additionnel qui nous mènera à des émissions nulles en 2030. Ceci couvre les 38 mesures et la Côte d'Ivoire va atteindre un but clair par rapport à la réduction des SLCP jusqu'à 58% de ces émissions du noir de carbone, jusqu'à 30% de ces émissions de méthane et jusqu'à 20% des émissions HFC à l'horizon 2030. Et par rapport à la santé, ça réduirait de plus de 7000 les décès prématurés provoqués par l'exposition aux matières particulières. Donc, pour terminer cette présentation, je veux partager avec vous 3 idées. D'abord, si nous renforçons, si nous tissons notre travail sur la base d'une analyse qui existe déjà, il y aura cohérence d'approche entre la contribution déterminée nationalement et les autres plans. L'analyse a utilisé le même système et a été organisée par les mêmes gens. Ils ont beaucoup fait pour renforcer la capacité, mais il reste beaucoup plus à faire. Ensuite, l'évaluation quantitative a été conçue comme une évaluation intégrée des problèmes climatiques, de la pollution de l'air, et nous avons envisagé les avantages multiples par rapport au développement. Donc, lorsqu'on fait ce genre de planification, on y intègre automatiquement les SLCP. Pardon, le son n'est pas bon. Je vous demande patience. L'interprète n'entend pas l'intervenant.
It's been very useful in this. One of
Ceci,
provide a
cet
very
outil de LIP est très utile et nous a beaucoup aidé à créer le système qui, à son tour, nous a permis de soutenir d'autres activités. Je vais m'arrêter là et j'attends la discussion pour en reparler. Je vous remercie tous de nous avoir donné la possibilité de partager ceci avec vous.
Thank you very much.
Merci
Ben, and
beaucoup
thank you for sharing Côte d'Ivoire's experience.
d'avoir partagé avec nous l'expérience de la Côte d'Ivoire. Nous avons déjà dépassé la plage horaire, mais nous espérons que les autres participants peuvent rester avec nous. Il faudra évoluer un peu les présentations prévues et nous allons demander maintenant aux spécialistes béninois du changement climatique et de l'énergie de nous donner une vue d'ensemble pour son pays. Je vous passe la parole.
May I please confirm if we have the representative from Benin on the line? Oh, yes. Welcome. Over to you, please. Unfortunately, we are unable to hear. Please. Could you please test your microphone? We are still unable to hear.
Oui, bonsoir tout le monde. Vous me recevez?
Oui. Maintenant, on vous entend. Merci.
D'accord. Donc, mon nom c'est Justin Agbo. J'interviens pour présenter cette expérience du Bénin parce que le point focal, M. Mongazi, qui devrait s'en charger, est un peu pris. Et Notre objectif, c'est donc de partager avec vous l'expérience faite dans l'actualisation de la CDN au Bénin en prenant en compte les polluants de courte durée de vie. Je constate que je n'arrive pas à faire défiler les diapos. Si c'est de votre côté, vous pouvez déjà passer au diapo suivant.
I'm sorry for the delay due to a technical problem. I would like you to go on to the next slide if possible.
On peut voir votre présentation. J'aimerais
can
confirmer si
see
vous avez...
Your presentation.
Pourriez-vous confirmer si
Could
vous
you
pouvez voir la présentation?
confirm that you can see it?
Chris, could you please confirm if you are managing that presentation?
I
It's
am
not
I am not managing that presentation.
No,
That's
no.
coming from Wilfried's screen.
Green. Okay, one moment, please. Oui, ça marche maintenant. On voit le changement de la
working.
présentation. C'est sur introduction maintenant.
We're up to introduction, right? Okay, I'm going to start with number 2. Number 2, I want to show you the results. We'll go to a more important slide. To slide 3. Slide 3.
Pourriez-vous parler plus proche à le microphone? On ne vous écoute pas très bien, s'il vous plaît.
The speaker's been asked to go nearer to his microphone because the sound quality isn't good.
Vous avez le diapo. Est-ce que vous pouvez défiler? Je vais présenter ici parce qu'il semble que
Could you scroll down, please?
défiler les diapos.
Because we can't do it.
Comme vous avez fait pour le collègue togolais, je vous demanderai de
Just as you did for Togo,
faire défiler les diapos là-bas. Vous me recevez?
please, can you hear me? Could you pass to the next slide, please?
Oui, un instant, j'ai besoin de partager mon écran pour pouvoir contrôler les diapos.
We're just doing that. We need to
Yes,
share the
okay.
screen. Please wait a moment.
Ça s'arrête automatiquement.
Un instant. Non, j'ai besoin d'un instant, s'il vous plaît. Est-ce que vous voyez l'écran?
Oui, je vois l'écran.
OK.
Je pense qu'on peut aller sur le diapo 3.
OK.
Sur le diapo 2, c'est juste un rappel du contexte.
We can go to slide 3.
Non, vous êtes à 4, vous êtes allé trop vite.
Now you've gone
Okay.
too fast. You're on number 4. As I was saying, I'm giving you the most important information in our view about the procedure and the current situation. This work was part of our nationally determined contribution and was initiated by the ministry through the NDC partnership, the contribution partnership. We received financial help from a German institution to revise our contribution plan. A team of national consultants was mobilized for this work to see whether short-lived climate pollutants and other air pollutants could be included in it. The Stockholm Institute assisted us with a team of technical advisors, and we also recruited an international consultant for this work to find mitigation measures. And so we included short-lived climate pollution in our contribution plan. We put two teams in place. One of them, there was great synergy between the two in terms of revising our contribution plan and what the Clean Air Coalition was able to do to help by assessing mitigation measures for all climate pollutants, all air pollutants. In this context, the main advantages were in terms of data, which we used as the basis for the work agreed between the teams, and also in terms of the hypotheses used. We were able to work on the basis of an agreed body of work. By using LEAP, we could strengthen consultants' capacities. It wasn't the first time we'd used LEAP. We'd used it to assess mitigation measures in terms of our national contribution plan. We consider that working with LEAP in revising our NDC enabled us to work with LEAP in other sectors, particularly in agriculture and waste. Let's go on to slide 5. Nationally speaking, the two teams received a lot of help from stakeholders, including ministries for each sector and their technical consultants, local authorities, the private sector, who provided data and information about policies, strategies, plans and projects needed to use LEAP. And we also organized workshops. So we did collect data in these different areas, and the data were used to develop 3 scenarios. We did a historical assessment up to 2018. The data showed a level, a base level, which was the basis for the mitigation measures we had to develop. And then there was a mitigation scenario for attenuation mitigation measures to help our development strategies, as I mentioned earlier. And based on measures that were identified through this process, we did an assessment of the situation to determine the potential for mitigation of greenhouse gases and also for SLCPs and other air pollutants. So mitigation through our contribution was carried out. Could we go to the next slide, please? Could we have the next slide, please? So, all in all, there were 16 mitigation measures in different sectors, which enabled us to see what the potential was for reducing greenhouse gas and SLCP emissions and other air pollutants. And now the important information, in our view, is to be able to use this information to reduce emissions generated from black carbon, which should be 14% in 2030 compared to the baseline. In terms of methane emissions, these should be 8% in 2030 in relation to the baseline. And I've got information for other types of pollutants, which you'll see in the next table. In relation to global assessment results, and in relation to the baseline scenario, you can see on the screen, first the baseline, what we call the reference scenario. That's the third line in the diagram. And then there's the last line below mitigation. The last line shows the total. This includes black carbon, which I mentioned earlier, particulate matter 2.5, shows the different percentages. So for each pollutant, organic carbon, black carbon, particulate matter, ammonia, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, volatile compounds. All of these are shown in this diagram in relation to the baseline, the mitigation, and the mitigation as a percentage of reduction. And now slide 9, please. Globally, I can tell you there have been about 20 actions in different sectors that you can see here. Electricity production, housing sector, public sector services, transport, agriculture, forestry, and other uses of land and waste. You can see that mitigation measures have been assessed for the whole sector. What's shown here is really affecting mitigation of greenhouse gases in the National Contribution Plan and SLCPs. Our purpose was to use this information to see how we could reduce carbon dioxide, methane, and other emissions, and see what advantages we could bring, particularly for these pollutants. And that's why I've mentioned in this table all the different measures taken. Could we go to number 10, please? Number 10. The results of our work were a national report on mitigation, and Benan's NDC have produced a global plan which is going to implement attenuation measures for SLCPs. And then different measures were identified and will be implemented. The the NDC, sorry, has been brought up to date. When we implement this plan together with an additional NDC, our experience will be of assistance in a new organization which will be coordinated nationally and will have input from local authorities. There were a lot of information was obtained from stakeholders about the content of the NDC and how to implement it. We did this through workshops. Please could we go to the next slide?
Oui, s'il vous plaît, si vous pouvez conclure, on doit avancer avec les autres présentations. Merci.
D'accord, donc le diapo suivant. Voilà, donc c'est le dernier diapo.
And here is the last slide, which shows you what we hope to do next. So we want to go on improving capacity for stakeholders like the ministries, local authorities. That means including climate change in all their considerations. I've already said that we've implemented these measures, but in this context, we're going to continue our work, and that our implementation includes a platform for implementing sector attenuation measures, because proceeding by means of sectors is extremely important. I believe that if we use the global plan to make sectoral plans, everyone will take ownership of the actions that need to be taken, whether in the sectors or elsewhere, and we will attain our objectives and mitigate greenhouse gases and SLCPs.
Thank you very much for the presentation from Benin. We appreciate it very much. We are looking at the time. We have 40 minutes left for this event. Therefore, I ask for the next panelist to please keep to 7 to 10 minutes, as we will need to move forward. So I therefore now invite Ghana, with the representation of Mr. Daniel Benefo from the Environmental Protection Agency of Ghana. Over to you, Daniel, please.
Hello. Please, can you see my screen? Can you confirm see my screen?
Yes, I confirm.
All right. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I'll be very, very brief. Good afternoon, colleagues. And I think I'm happy to be here to share Ghana's experience. A lot of what I'm about to say has been said already. So, and the experiences are not different. So I would be quick to run through my slides and focus on the last two slides, right? So, Ghana is a pioneer when it comes to the CCAC. We have since been part of the CCAC, have been a major or among the leading countries that started working on SNAP. And as a result, we have achieved 4 very important areas that I want to highlight. The idea of building capacities, mainstream capacities in the country across the various ministries. I think it's important to highlight that. The other aspect is also our progressive improvements in integrating SLCP mitigation measures into national planning process. These issues had already been mentioned. Just want to reiterate that. And also the fact that we've also been able to raise awareness on the interlinkages between developmental benefits, health benefits, and also climate benefits of these actions. Let me highlight some few things that we have done. The first one, I think, again, Chris already mentioned part of it. We have been able to consistently incorporated the reporting of SLCPs into our national inventory system. And we have done so last 5 years. We have also been part or pioneered the process of using the LEAP tool, and even have further developed our own internal tools to help us assess the impact and the potentials of these measures. So not only have we used the tool, we've also been able to mainstream the tool, right, across energy sector and also the environment sector. And it has become part and parcel of what we do in terms of planning, energy and environment, and had also further developed or customized aspect of it for our own benefit. So that's a very important point I thought I should highlight. The other example is also already mentioned by Côte d'Ivoire, also the fact that all of these processes led us to developing a national action plan on SLCPs, and also followed it up with a resource mobilization strategy, right? So not only did we prepare the action plan, but we also back it up with how to mobilize resources to support that. The other point I want to highlight is also how we have integrated SLCP measures into our climate commitment. So that, again, has already been mentioned by several countries, and we are doing the same. Here are the policy actions in the NDCs and their corresponding targets that clearly addresses SLPCs areas in the area of oil and gas, methane recovery, compost, agriculture, transportation, limits. So we have covered most of the sectors from transport to agriculture to oil and gas, as well as energy. So these are all the measures that are covered in the NDCs and at the same time, SLCP specific. 4 slides. There is therefore an ongoing effort to facilitate implementation of the plans and also the NDC plans. So we have 2 very important plans. The first one is the SLCP National Action Plan, as well as the fact that we also have the NDCs, and we intend to then begin to implement these measures. So the focus is on implementation. And therefore, we are currently focusing on designing an implementation pathway document to inform us as to how to focus activities for implementation. So that is a very, our priorities. So these are efforts to remove the barriers for implementation. So the first one is to define the pathway. The second effort that we are doing right now is to develop input-output indicators and incorporate these indicators into the national monitoring framework. So that is also being done as we speak. We have developed the indicators. We have come up with a tracking tool that is going to be used by the National Planning Commission to track the implementation of these measures as is being reflected in the national plans. Another example, so here I'll end soon with this example. We have also now focusing on resource mobilization, right? Currently, we are very much actively engaged in the Article 6 markets, and therefore some of the SLCP related projects that could create carbon credits are already receiving attention. One area, major area, is efficient coke stoves, right? And also biomass briquettes. And recently we have also been engaged in composting. So for composting, biomass briquettes, and improved cook stoves, we are actively going to implement a carbon credits programs in these areas. The other area that we are working on is also rice production, the promotion and adoption of alternative wetting and drying, and is part of our Article 6 engagement with the Swiss government. The other two is also our efforts in raising resources from the GCF. So that the first one is on electric bus projects for Accra. So the point here is that we are now looking at all available options for us to mobilize resources internationally. There is also an aspect that deals with the local aspect, but I didn't bring it here, but just to highlight that. And again, just to end, these are some of the other CCAC related effort that we've made in the past. We have prepared an AQMP plan for Accra. We are also implementing the sulfur reduction in diesel program. We implemented an urban health program in Ghana and also a diesel engine program at the ports. In conclusion, it is important to say that whilst it is important to be part of the pioneering countries and establish the national system in awareness, it is important then to take off. We have had enough of the policy work, the readiness work, the institutional work. The time is now ripe for us to scale up our effort of implementation to bring real impact. And we believe that the CCAC platform provides us with the opportunity to unlock greater opportunities for implementation. Thank you very much. And over to you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you for sharing Ghana's experience. And thank you for staying so very precisely on time. Now we would like to turn to Mr. Balababa from Nigeria. He's a CCAC coordinator. And we welcome you, Bala, over to you. And if you could please stick to the 10 minutes, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Catalina. Good evening, everyone. The essence of my presentation is to take us through our experience in the development of the Nigeria's SLCP plan, its development, its implementation, and how we included it into our revised NDC and the efforts we are doing currently to see to its implementation. So the presentation will focus on the overview of the national planning process, the priority measures endorsed and which are currently under implementation, and the implementation process of the National Action Plan, and how we linked the mitigation measures to the NDCs, and the NDC revision exercise, which we participated actively to see to the inclusion of the SLCPs in the revised NDC. The processes including the roundtable discussions, the bilateral meetings with the MDAs, and the process at the end of the day that led to the inclusion of the NDC of the SLCP measures into the NDC. So next slide, please. The overview of the National Action Plan, just as Daniel said, much has been said about the processes which are virtually the same. So, and in most cases where much has been said about certain topics, I will just gloss over them. The overview of the national planning process, the CCAC supported Nigeria through the Ministry of Environment to develop the National Action Plan, which identified 22 measures, which were endorsed by the Federal Executive Council. And the country implemented the institutional strengthening component and also the development of the National Action Plan. The institutional strengthening component created awareness and mobilized support from all the stakeholders, including the MDS, NGOs, and all other relevant stakeholders. Then the SLCP Coordination Office was established, and then we inaugurated our advisory and task force groups, which helped in the development of the National Action Plan. Then we also emphasized the and implemented the identification of desk offices and also desk officers in the MDS. And then we have been having regular consultative meetings, which led to the development of the National Action Plan. Nigeria is also among the early members of the CCAC, and we are active in several CCAC initiatives. And the plan was actually supported under the guide of our international lead partners, the Stockholm Environment Institute, IUPA, and UNEP Regional Office. And the 22 mitigation measures approved are currently under implementation. Next slide, please. So these are the mitigation measures that have been identified and recommended and endorsed by the Federal Executive Council, and they cut across all sectors, including the transport, residential, oil and gas, waste, industry, agriculture, and power, and also HFCs. And these are the SLCP investment measures that have been recommended, 22 of them. And then these are the targets. Also, the details are there in the table shown on the slide. So we move to the, to mention also, they favorably align with what Alice told us about the African assessment, and also her recommendation that we should recommend a holistic approach to attain the continental goal of our climate actions. So next slide, please. So the implementation, when the Federal Executive Council approved the implementation, they mandated the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, and the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation to coordinate the overall implementation of the plan. And each one of them has a specific role to play. The Ministry of Environment coordinates the implementation of the whole plan. And then the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning are saddled with the responsibility of endorsing and mainstreaming the National Action Plan into the national development process, and also making provision for budgetary allocations to SLCP projects for implementation in the MDS. And then the Secretary to the Government will be responsible for updating the Federal Executive Council on the progress made in the development of, in the implementation of the plan. So the Ministry of Environment is coordinating the implementation as at present, and the Ministry of Budget and National Planning is mainstreaming and making provision for the budget, budgetary provision for SLCP projects to be implemented across the MDS, and it's currently going on. Then the Ministry of Environment is also taking the responsibility of monitoring, reporting, and verifying the implementation process. Next slide, please. So we linked all the measures to our NDCs. The NDCs have the priority sectors as shown. We have the energy sector, the oil and gas, industry, transport, and waste. And as you can see, the measures that will be taken in all the priority sectors. Next slide, please. Next slide. Hello. Hello.
Hi, Bala. I'm
Yeah,
here.
Can you hear me?
Very well, Bala. I'm on the UNDP support program slide.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. In the process of including the SLCPs into the revised NDC, the SNAP team in the Department of Climate Change engaged and participated actively in the process. And the UNDP supported the inclusion of the SLCPs into the revised NDCs. So, they engaged the Stockholm Environment Institute to work with Ricardo to ensure that the SLCPs were included in the revised NDC. And that was successfully done. And now we have the SLCPs in the revised NDC. The UNDP under the Climate Promise Support Program also supported inclusion of the water sector, forestry and nature-based solutions, gender integration, and the ILO Improvement and Decent Work Program. So we are grateful to the support given by the UNDP to include the SLCPs in our revised NDC. So next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, so these are some of the activities that were carried out during the NDC revision exercise, including the round table discussions with the implementers and the donor funders, to include the UNDP, the Climate Action Enhancement Package through the NDC partnership, the GIZ, Islamic Development Bank, African Development Bank, 2050 Pathway Platform, and Natural Eco Capital. All these are the implementers and funders that interacted with the SNAP team to ensure that the SLCPs were included in the revised NDC. Next slide, please. Next slide, yeah. So this is also one of the activities that were carried out during the NDC revision exercise, that is bilateral meetings with MDAs. All those that participated in the roundtable discussion, as mentioned, the UNDP, CAEP, GIZ, Africa had a roundtable and bilateral discussion with the MDAs to discuss all the measures that will be included in the revised NDC. We visited the Ministries of Power, Ministry of Agriculture, the National Red Program, Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Finance and Budget and National Planning. So the objective was to kickstart the NDC revision process to support broader NDC revision and implementation. And the SNAP team participated actively and ensured that the SLCPs were considered in the revised NDC. Next, please. Next slide. Next slide.
It should be there, Bala. We're on highlights of the mission outcome.
The highlight of the mission outcome was that to emphasize that the CCAC focal point and the SNAP team were members of the mission that participated in the roundtable discussion and also had bilateral discussions with the MDAs and also ensured the inclusion of the measures, SLCP measures into the revised NDC. And this was also made possible by the engagement of the Stockholm Environment Institute, which worked with the Ricardo to finalize the inclusion. And we also appreciate the UNDP Support Climate Promise that supported the inclusion of the SLCPs into the revised NDC. And we are currently, and also appreciate the support of CCAC again in the implementation of the SLCPs, and currently is also supporting the implementation of the SLCPs in the NDC implementation program, which we are working closely with the Stockholm Environment Institute. And we have already started a process of identifying the priority measures that can enjoy funding both from the NDC implementation funding program and also with other funding sources, including maybe from the CCAC, from World Bank, and from FAO, and so on. So we are working on that with the Stockholm Environment Institute and the Nigerian NDC implementation team with their climate finance advisors. And we are working as a team with the supporting the Department of Climate Change, the NDA, through the Nigeria's NDC implementation team. Thank you. Over to you, Catalina.
Thank you very much, Bala, for your presentation. Thank you for sharing Nigeria's experience and for helping us understand what activities are underway to support implementation. I now turn over to my colleague, Vincent Banuel, who will present the next session.
Thank you very much, Catalina, for giving the baton to me to continue your work. Thank you to all the panelists for your great work. Because of time, I'll be very quick on this segment. This is the last segment of this webinar. The segment will focus on implementation of
la dernière séance
to take up actions in the region. We have with us Mr. Shakel Batsi from AFDB. Shakel is a climate change expert at the African Development Bank, and he will be giving a presentation on climate finance and the opportunity available at the bank for ECOWAS countries. So, Mr. Shakel, if you are ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vincent, and thank you very much for the for everyone present today. So I'm Shakel Batsi. Please allow me some time to load the presentation.
Please, Shakel, you're on mute. You're on mute.
My apologies. All right, so let me start again. So good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So I'm Shakel Batsi from the African Development Bank, and I'm delivering these presentations on behalf of Dr. Alhamdou Dosuma, who is the Acting Director for the Climate Change and Green Growth Department. So just a disclaimer, I mean, the presentation that we had from the various panelists from the different countries were very interesting. And the purpose of my presentation will be mostly to focus on climate finance tools that are available at the level of the African Development Bank, and not specifically tailored for short-lived climate pollutants or air pollutants specifically. But I will be sharing, I have shared already with Chris and team a handbook on the different mechanisms available, which we're happy to share afterwards. So in terms of climate finance, so it is broadly defined as any type of financing used to respond to climate change. The climate finance is now key to support mitigation and adaptation actions. And not, I mean, without going into much details, we are very short of what has been expected to be delivered for developing countries and developed countries also to achieve the climate targets. So this is, I think it's from a climate initiative. So as you can see, we have the various IPCC scenarios have initially assessed that we need in the order of trillions of dollars to be able to achieve our climate targets. However, this has what we have achieved have been dramatically less of what is been expected. And so far, for instance, for 2020, while it was expected to have $3.8 trillion invested into climate issues, there was only approximately $620 billion. In terms of how this climate finance is distributed globally, you can see in the graph that out of the $600 billion that was used, only roughly about 20 billion came to Africa. And of the 20 billion, the public sector chipped in the most, more than 3/4 actually. So this shows that one of the Achilles heel probably for Africa is to be able to mobilize climate finance from the private sector. Western countries and in Asia and in Latin America, to some extent, have been able to mobilize more resources than Africa for climate finance specifically. When we talk about the AFDB, we have the bank has two kinds of funds, climate funds. We have internal, the bank's own funds, through that is dispensed through the Sustainable Energy Fund for Africa, SEFA. We have the Africa Climate Change Fund. We have the ClimDev Africa Special Fund, which is mostly for climate development and looking specifically at data. In terms of external fund, for which the AFDB acts as either as an implementing partner or more specifically for GCF as an accredited entity. Sorry. So we have the Green Climate Fund, we have the Climate Investment Funds, we have a Global Environment Facility, and we have the Adaptation Fund. So the way this works, they operate at different levels. For some, they offer grants, and for others, they offer concessional debt instrument, and some of them offers both. So from planning stage to project development stage to actually project financing phase, we have different tools that can be that provide these financing. And for example, the SEFA is mostly about grants, and these grants usually come in for project preparation to create a bit of an enabling environment, and also for project at the project development phase. That is when the project is being written to be able to access larger funds from either donors or from the private sector. And in terms of project financing, here you have the GCF, which is the major one, which provides project finances in the form of grants. This and also in terms of concessional debt or other financial instruments as is applicable in the context that is applied. And probably we should also mention that the GCF also provides funding for the project development phase through the PPF, project preparation funding, and also helps a bit in enabling environment. But in terms of the core principles, the core area of operations for the GCF is mostly for project finance. So looking at climate finance, the one in which the major one I mentioned is the Green Climate Fund. So in terms of financial mechanisms for MEAs, the GCF is focused mostly on the UNFCCC, so the United Nations Framework for Climate Change Convention, while the GEF, the Global Environment Facility, it covers a broader portfolio of MEAs where SLCPs may come directly involved. But as we have repeated over and over again, there's a very strong interlinkage between climate change and pollutants. So they both operate more or less in the same framework. Looking specifically at the GCF, the approval process for the GCF is quite tedious. So it is very elaborate. There's lots of steps involved. There are lots of technical committees that are at the level of GCF, through which we have to go through the technical committees, the climate, the various. There's the ITAP, which comes very advanced stage, and we have the earlier committees that look through the project funding proposals and then resend it to the accredited entities, and can be FDB, can be UNDP, or any other agencies to rework the proposal as required. Usually the focus for these funding proposals are on climate measures, which are consistent with national commitment under the Paris Agreement, notably the NDCs. We are aware that many countries now have updated the NDCs, so now is a good time to start knocking on GCF's door for funding. One thing that GCF is very peculiar about is about the climate rationale. So GCF puts lots of emphasis on ensuring that in the funding proposal, the climate rationale is clearly laid out, be it for adaptation, be it for mitigation. It must be scientifically backed. And overall, if you can, the overall principle for GCF is to add on incrementality. So that is, which is the outputs and outcome should be additional to the baseline. So this is in the way of formulating GCF proposals, it's critical that we show what is the catalytic support that the GCF will be providing. So in terms of, I mentioned it, in terms of the climate rationale, this is something that GCF stressed on very significantly. It is important to have a scientific and to provide a scientific underpinning for evidence-based climate decision making, and this would allow GCF to quickly grasp what is the rationale in terms of climate impacts and what are the decisions need to be made. So why we are stressing on this is because for our experience of developing projects for African countries, we have time and time again had GCF come back to us saying that we need to strengthen our climate rationale. So this is just also to advise you that if you're proposing to have GCF projects in your pipeline, you should ensure that you have enough resources to make the case in terms of a climate perspective. This is a bit of the GCF approval process. So definitely for any projects, they need to have the commitment from the government. So once there is an idea coming in, usually what we do is to have a concept note. Once we have this concept note, it's important that the national designated authority of the country gives us the no objection for us as an accredited entity to take this submission forward. Usually, once this is obtained, we can submit the funding proposals. From step 2 to 3, it can be the concept note can be directly elaborated into funding proposals whenever the country has the capacity or the accredited entity has the capacity to write the funding proposal, or we can there can be the option of going to GCF and seeking for funding for PPF, project preparation funding, to work on a full funding proposal, which is very elaborate in terms of, in the sense that it not only look at the climate rationale, but it also put heavy emphasis on the environmental and social safeguards. So this goes hand in hand, and GCF. So this is why GCF allows us a variety of tools to be able to provide funding proposals. Once these funding proposals are concluded or prepared, it is sent to GCF, which has a series of committees that look after the funding proposals. I mentioned the ITAP. There's also the Climate Investment Committee, which looks at the different GCF investment criteria. And that's once all the boxes are ticked, it goes for a board decision. And once it is approved, there is a legal agreement between the government of the country, the accredited entity, and the GCF. So in conclusion, there is a need to work together to identify and prepare quality projects for submissions for climate finance opportunities. If a specific country wants to engage with the African Development Bank, the bank can support at the various stages, but usually whenever there is, the bank is helping a country to prepare a funding proposal, the bank also will have to provide co-financing. So it is also important that country teams that are preparing funding proposals ensure that the African Development Bank has projects within the pipeline, the country program, that is also contributing to the project they want to put in place. This goes on to the second point, where countries have to ensure that their funding proposals are aligned with the African Development Bank's project cycle, and the timing should be right. In case there is interest, the country teams should liaise with the African Development Bank to identify what are the financing gaps, and also what is the climate rationale. And again, I will stress again on the fact that we have to obtain a no-objection letter from the host country, which is usually through the National Designated Authority. And as I mentioned, it is very strict timelines, and also it's a very cumbersome process in some cases. So it is very important to ensure that everyone is aware of what are the timelines and work diligently to meet the targets. So that's it from me. The team will be sharing a handbook which contains a bit of a guide on how to what are the specific funds available within the bank, and who are the relevant contact persons to approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shakil. We take your advice very seriously. Thank you for sharing with us the various financial instruments available and the opportunities that we can actually make use of in terms of climate financing. Next on the line is Madam Carolina Umanta from the Global Methane Hub. She is the Program Director for Circular Economy at the Global Methane Hub. Madam Carolina, if you are ready, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Vicent, and thanks for the great presentation that we saw during this webinar and for CCAC organization. As you said, I'm from Global Methane Hub, and I'm going to present you this new hub that wants to help countries, governments, and non-stakeholder actors to reduce methane emissions. Why methane is important and why now? You already talked something of this during your presentations, but much recent of the warming has came from methane. It is a short-lived pollutant, you know that, and this is 86 times more potent than CO2 on the 20-year scale time. So that is the big issue with methane. And we know also that 60% of all methane emissions are anthropogenic. So for tackling methane is crucial to keep warming under 1.5 degrees and meet the Paris Agreement. What is the Global Methane Hub? Is a $330 million philanthropy effort to align funding on methane mitigation. It is focused on oil, gas, agriculture, and circular economy, mainly on waste. And the objective is to support the Global Methane Pledge signatories and the potential signatories in meeting their pledge goals and going beyond that. That is important. We drive coordination and collaboration on methane advocacy, granting to highest impact areas, cutting across sectors. And our office, I am in Chile right now, in fact, in Santiago, okay? We have people of all over the world, but the main office are here in Santiago. We have an agreement of collaboration with CCAC. As you know, they received $11 million to reduce methane emission, and for that they are working with countries in order to have methane plan actions. You already present some of them, and CCAC could be like a really important actor in order to promote this and to have more action. What is important, and I'm doing this really fast because we are lacking of time, but you know that methane is source of methane are from agriculture, fossil fuel, and waste. That is why we have these three main areas, and the impacts are on climate, on health, and also in agriculture and ecosystem because of the yield of losses that could produce. What do we know in Africa? And you present really good presentations, so I'm not going to give any details on that. On this is that the methane emissions are rising, and we have information on that. So we need to work together in order to make this tipping point and start going down, as you present in your plans or NDCs. What we want is to have concrete commitments in order to reduce methane emissions, and we are seeking, or going to reductions of 60% on fossil fuels, on waste about 30 to 35%, on agriculture on around 20 to 25%. Okay, this is what we are going to look, and we must implement out-of-the-box solution. That is what we are looking for every system. And in my case, because I am working in circular economy related with waste and food waste, we like to put that together. Methane emission mitigations provides opportunities for quick wins. That is the good news for safer climate, cleaner air, better agriculture productivity already. And as you know, it has low cost. So that is the important thing, and it's very effective. We must reduce the emissions, and we know that the pledge is 30% by 2030, but we also know that the assessment report of the working group number 2 and number 3 of the IPCC established that methane roles in preventing warming is crucial in order to take these tipping points, and that we need at least 34% reductions by 2030. So we need to go to the pledge and beyond that. Okay, that is what we are looking for. We are working in some concrete projects now. We are really new organization, but we are looking for projects that have good impact and important impacts, and that could be replicated. And we are looking also projects that could show to the people how methane is emitted in different places. And for example, we have satellite observations that will allow us to evaluate progress and enforce, and also support communities to defend themselves from pollution sources. We want to work with local communities because they are exposed to hazard pollutions, and methane leak agenda makes this problem visible. So we are working with some institutions, and we want to work with more. What also we want to highlight is that we must always look to leverage multiple benefits, okay? You have talked about this during the webinar, and this is our main purpose, to show that methane mitigation could help in odor control and environmental justice, in surface water pollution. It has a really important relation with 2.5 particulate matters, and the formation from ammonia, and in deforestation and agriculture burning. So what other thing it's important is that the mission related with methane, it has been growing concern on environmental impacts on food production. Okay, that is another issue that is really important. And we know that 1 gallon of milk is equal to 2 gallons of gasoline in terms of emissions. So we need to put this in the same level. We are always, and we want to fight fossil fuels, of course, but we need to put this issue also at the same level, because we know now that there is a lot of emissions regarding food system production, and that what is really important is what is related with waste. A lot of cities, countries, territories has an important problem on waste. And considering this 86 potential warming, we know that 1 kilo of organic waste equals to 3 times in CO2 equivalent emissions. I am just ending. So that is the reason why we are addressing landfills operation in order to capture methane and in order to minimize or ban organic waste that goes to landfills. Because we know and we have good experience. This is an example of Sunshine Canyon in landfill in Los Angeles, that we could go and reduce methane correlated with fewer community others complaints. So that is good news, and we want to highlight this. So just ending, and I know that we have little time. Global methane support will support main sectors of methane emission, which is oil, gas, agriculture, and waste. We invest in advocacy to support global action, supporting global methane pledge signatories and potential signatories. We support ambitious and catalytic strategies with the goal of long-term transformation via rapid and successful wins. And new and small, and we are new and small entrepreneurial organization. We are open to new ideas, partners, or discussions. So really, I'm glad to meet you all and to participate in this webinar and in new conversations that I'm sure we're going to have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carolina. That was very informative, educative, and a lot more. Due to time, we'll just give about 5 minutes for questions from the floor. If anybody has any question for our panelists, we'll take them now. You can also leave your comment on the text section, the text box. We'll pick them up and then follow them up on. Any question on the floor? Okay, so I'll give the baton back to Catalina. Catalina, you can hear me. About you.
Yes. Thank you, Vincent, and thank you to all of the panelists for the very interesting and informative presentations. Unfortunately, we've exceeded our time and there's never enough time. So we really look forward to going back to some in-person meetings where we can have the opportunity to network. But again, I'm glad Vincent gave participants the option to raise any urgent questions. But if okay with panelists, we would welcome the opportunity to follow up with you with questions via email, as I think the interaction should continue. But this was a very useful webinar, and I hope everybody was able to learn more about the CCAC supported national planning work in West Africa and all of the progress that has been made across the region with the experience sharing from Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Benin, Togo, and Ghana. And we hope that this will serve as an opportunity to raise awareness as well as interest from other countries in the region to cooperate with the countries that have gone through this process that has highlighted such that has highlighted the benefits of mitigating shoreline climate pollutants and all of the co-benefits. And obviously the last presentations were very informative in how we can seek further support to help implement these measures. The CCAC is at the stage of implementation, so we're very eager to find collaborative opportunities and matchmaking opportunities. So without any additional remarks, I would like to thank everybody again for participating on this webinar and look forward to any follow-up discussions that take place. Thank you very much to all. We will share the presentations and the recording. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.